a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Dating. Dating is a stage of romantic relationships in humans whereby two people meet socially with the aim of each assessing the other's suitability as a prospective partner in an intimate relationship or marriage. It is a form of courtship, consisting of social activities done by the couple, either alone or with others. The protocols and practices of dating, and the terms used to describe it, vary considerably from country to country and over time. While the term has several meanings, the most frequent usage refers to two people exploring whether they are romantically or sexually compatible by participating in dates with the other. With the use of modern technology, people can date via telephone or computer or meet in person. Dating may also involve two or more people who have already decided that they share romantic or sexual feelings toward each other. These people will have dates on a regular basis, and they may or may not be having sexual relations. This period of courtship is sometimes seen as a precursor to engagement. Some cultures require people to wait until a certain age to begin dating, which has been a source of controversy. History. Dating as an institution is a relatively recent phenomenon which has mainly emerged in the last few centuries. From the standpoint of anthropology and sociology, dating is linked with other institutions such as marriage and the family, which have also been changing rapidly and which have been subject to many forces, including advances in technology and medicine. As human societies have evolved from hunter-gatherers into civilized societies, there have been substantial changes in relations between people, with perhaps one of the few remaining biological constants being that both adult women and men must have sexual intercourse for human procreation to happen. Humans have been compared to other species in terms of sexual behavior. Neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky constructed a reproductive spectrum with opposite poles being tournament species, in which males compete fiercely for reproductive privileges with females, and pair bond arrangements, in which a male and female will bond for life. According to Sapolsky, humans are somewhat in the middle of this spectrum, in the sense that humans form pair bonds, but there is the possibility of cheating or changing partners. These species' particular behavior patterns provide a context for aspects of human reproduction, including dating. However, one particularity of the human species is that pair bonds are often formed without necessarily having the intention of reproduction. In modern times, emphasis on the institution of marriage, generally described as a male-female bond, has obscured pair bonds formed by same-sex and transsexual couples, and that many heterosexual couples also bond for life without offspring, or that often pairs that do have offspring separate. Thus, the concept of marriage is changing widely in many countries. Historically, marriages in most societies were arranged by parents and older relatives, with the goal not being love, but legacy and economic stability and political alliances, according to anthropologists. Accordingly, there was little need for a temporary trial period such as dating before a permanent community-recognized union was formed between a man and a woman. While pair bonds of varying forms were recognized by most societies as acceptable social arrangements, marriage was reserved for heterosexual pairings and had a transactional nature, where wives were in many cases a form of property being exchanged between father and husband, and who would have to serve the function of reproduction. Communities exerted pressure on people to form pair bonds in places such as Europe. In China, society demanded people get married before having a sexual relationship, and many societies found that some formally recognized bond between a man and a woman was the best way of rearing and educating children, as well as helping to avoid conflicts and misunderstandings regarding competition for mates. Generally, during much of recorded history of humans in civilization, and into the Middle Ages in Europe, weddings were seen as business arrangements between families, while romance was something that happened outside of marriage discreetly, such as covert meetings. The 12th century book The Art of Courtly Love advised that true love can have no place between husband and wife. According to one view, clandestine meetings between men and women, generally outside of marriage or before marriage, were the precursors to today's dating. From about 1700, a worldwide movement, perhaps described as the empowerment of the individual, took hold, leading towards greater emancipation of women and equality of individuals. Men and women became more equal politically, financially, and socially in many nations. Women eventually won the right to vote in many countries and own property and receive equal treatment by the law, and these changes had profound impacts on the relationships between men and women. Parental influence declined. In many societies, individuals could decide, on their own, whether they should marry, whom they should marry, and when they should marry. A few centuries ago, dating was sometimes described as a courtship ritual where young women entertain gentlemen callers, usually in the home, under the watchful eye of a chaperone, but increasingly, in many Western countries, it became a self-initiated activity with two young people going out as a couple in public together. Still, dating varies considerably by nation, custom, religious upbringing, technology, and social class. And important exceptions with regards to individual freedoms remain, as many countries today still practice arranged marriages, request dowries, and forbid same-sex pairings. Although in many countries, movies, meals, and meeting in coffee houses and other places is now popular, as are advice books suggesting various strategies for men and women. In other parts of the world, such as in South Asia and many parts of the Middle East, being alone in public as a couple with another person is not only frowned upon, but can even lead to either person being socially ostracized. In the 20th century, dating was sometimes seen as a precursor to marriage, but it could also be considered as an end in itself, that is, an informal social activity akin to friendship. It generally happened in that portion of a person's life before the age of marriage. But as marriage became less permanent with the advent of divorce, dating could happen at other times in people's lives as well. People became more mobile. Rapidly developing technology played a huge role. New communication technology such as the telephone, internet and text messaging enabled dates to be arranged without face-to-face contact. Cars extended the range of dating as well as enabled backseat sexual exploration. In the mid-20th century, the advent of birth control as well as safer procedures for abortion changed the equation considerably, and there was less pressure to marry as a means for satisfying sexual urges. New types of relationships formed. It was possible for people to live together without marrying and without children. Information about human sexuality grew, and with it an acceptance of all types of sexual orientations is becoming more common. Today, the institution of dating continues to evolve at a rapid rate with new possibilities and choices opening up, particularly through online dating. Wide variation in behavior patterns. Social rules regarding dating vary considerably according to variables such as country, social class, race, religion, age, sexual orientation and gender. Behavior patterns are generally unwritten and constantly changing. There are considerable differences between social and personal values. Each culture has particular patterns which determine such choices as whether the man asks the woman out, where people might meet, whether kissing is acceptable on a first date, the substance of conversation, who should pay for meals or entertainment, or whether splitting expenses is allowed. Among the Karen people in Burma and Thailand, women are expected to write love poetry and give gifts to win over the man. Since dating can be a stressful situation, there is the possibility of humor to try to reduce tensions. For example, director Blake Edwards wanted to date singing star Julie Andrews, and he joked in parties about her persona by saying that her endlessly cheerful governess image from movies such as Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music gave her the image of possibly having lilacs for pubic hair. Andrews appreciated his humor, sent him lilacs, dated him and later married him. And the couple stayed together for 41 years until his death in 2010. Different meanings of the term. While the term dating has many meanings, the most common refers to a trial period in which two people explore whether to take the relationship further towards a more permanent relationship. In this sense, Dating refers to the time when people are physically together in public as opposed to the earlier time period in which people are arranging the date, perhaps by corresponding by email or text or phone. Another meaning of the term dating is to describe a stage in a person's life when he or she is actively pursuing romantic relationships with different people. If two unmarried celebrities are seen in public together, they are often described as dating, which means they were seen in public together, and it is not clear whether they are merely friends, exploring a more intimate relationship, or are romantically involved. A related sense of the term is when two people have been out in public only a few times, but have not yet committed to a relationship. In this sense, dating describes an initial trial period and can be contrasted with being in a committed relationship. Evaluation. One of the main purposes of dating is for two or more people to evaluate one another's suitability as a long-term companion or spouse. Often physical characteristics, personality, financial status, and other aspects of the involved persons are judged and, as a result, feelings can be hurt and confidence shaken. Because of the uncertainty of the whole situation, the desire to be acceptable to the other person, and the possibility of rejection, dating can be very stressful for all parties involved. Some studies have shown that dating tends to be extremely difficult for people with social anxiety disorder. While some of what happens on a date is guided by an understanding of basic, unspoken rules, there is considerable room to experiment, and there are numerous sources of advice available. Sources of advice include magazine articles, self-help books, dating coaches, friends, and many other sources. And the advice given can pertain to all facets of dating, including such aspects as where to go, what to say, what not to say, what to wear, how to end a date, how to flirt, and differing approaches regarding first dates versus subsequent dates. In addition, advice can apply to periods before a date, such as how to meet prospective partners, as well as after a date, such as how to break off a relationship. There are now more than 500 businesses worldwide that offer dating coach services, with almost 350 of those operating in the US, and the number of these businesses has surged since 2005. Frequency of dating varies by person and situation. Among singles actively seeking partners, 36% had been on no dates in the past 3 months, 13% had 1 date, 22% had 2 to 4 dates, and 25% had 5 or more dates, according to a 2005 US survey. Meeting places. There are numerous ways to meet potential dates, including blind dates, classified ads, dating websites, hobbies, holidays, office romance, social networking, speed dating, and others. A Pew study in 2005 which examined Internet users in long-term relationships including marriage, found that many met by contacts at work or at school. The survey found that 55% of relationship-seeking singles agreed that it was difficult to meet people where they live. Work is a common place to meet potential spouses. Although there are some indications that the Internet is overtaking the workplace as an introduction venue. In Britain, 1 in 5 marry a co-worker, but half of all workplace romances end within 3 months. One drawback of office dating is that a bad date can lead to workplace awkwardness. Gender differences. There is a general perception that men and women approach dating differently, hence the reason why advice for each sex varies greatly, particularly when dispensed by popular magazines. For example, it is a common belief that heterosexual men often seek women based on beauty and youth. Psychology researchers at the University of Michigan suggested that men prefer women who seem to be malleable and odd, and prefer younger women with subordinate jobs such as secretaries and assistants and fact-checkers rather than executive-type women. Online dating patterns suggest that men are more likely to initiate online exchanges, and extrapolate that men are less choosy, seek younger women, and cast a wide net. In a similar vein, the stereotype for heterosexual women is that they seek well-educated men who are their age or older with high-paying jobs. Evolutionary psychology suggests that women are the choosier of the genders, since reproduction is a much larger investment for women, who have more to lose by making bad choices. All of these are examples of gender stereotypes which plague dating discourse and shape individuals' and society's expectations of how heterosexual relationships should be navigated. In addition to the detrimental effects of upholding limited views of relationships and sexual and romantic desires, stereotypes also lead to framing social problems in a problematic way. For example, some have noted that educated women in many countries including Italy and Russia, and the United States find it difficult to have a career as well as raise a family, prompting a number of writers to suggest how women should approach dating and how to time their careers and personal life. The advice comes with the assumption that the work-life balance is inherently a woman's problem. In many societies, there is a view that women should fulfill the role of primary caregivers, with little to no spousal support and with few services by employers or government such as parental leave or child care. Accordingly, an issue regarding dating is the subject of career timing, which generates controversy. Some views reflect a traditional notion of gender roles. For example, Danielle Crittenden in What Our Mothers Didn't Tell Us argued that having both a career and family at the same time was taxing and stressful for a woman. As a result, she suggested that women should date in their early 20s with a seriousness of purpose, marry when their relative beauty permitted them to find a reliable partner, have children, then return to work in their early 30s with kids in school. Crittenden acknowledged that splitting a career path with a 10-year baby-raising hiatus posed difficulties. There are contrasting views which suggest that women should focus on careers in their 20s and 30s. Columnist Maureen Dowd quoted comedian Bill Maher on the subject of differing dating agendas between men and women. Women get in relationships because they want somebody to talk to. Men want women to shut up. In studies comparing children with heterosexual families and children with homosexual families, there have been no major differences noted, though some claims suggest that kids with homosexual parents end up more well-adjusted than their peers with heterosexual parents, purportedly due to the lack of marginalizing gender roles in same-sex families. It is increasingly common today, however, with new generations and in a growing number of countries, to frame the work-life balance issue as a social problem rather than a gender problem. With the advent of a changing workplace, the increased participation of women in the labor force, an increasing number of men who are picking up their share of parenting and housework, and more governments and industries committing themselves to achieving gender equality, the question of whether or not or when to start a family is slowly being recognized as an issue that touches both genders. Love. The prospect of love often entails anxiety, sometimes with a fear of commitment and a fear of intimacy for persons of both sexes. One woman said, "Being really intimate with someone in a committed sense is kind of threatening," and described love as the most terrifying thing. In her Psychology Today column, research scientist, columnist, and author Debbie Herbenik compared it to a roller coaster. One dating advisor agreed that love is risky, and wrote that, "There is truly only one real danger that we must concern ourselves with, and that is closing our hearts to the possibility that love exists." Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like